Hi everybody, we're going to do some carving. So we're going to start with soap, we're going to move to balsa foam, and then we're going to go to plaster, and then finally to soapstone. So what you're going to need is your dial soap and your balsa foam. So that's what we're going to concentrate on this week. So I do notice that the dial soap is a little smelly, and I don't love that about it, so I have to apologize to you about that. Usually I use ivory soap, so if you have some ivory soap around or you want to get some, you'll get away from the spring rain scent of this dial. So that's up to you. But if you're sensitive to perfume, you might want to do that. So a couple things. I might suggest you try your cardboard knife for this. But if you have a kitchen knife or an X-Acto knife, you might want to employ that. Also, carefully, you could use some sort of box cutter if you wanted to. And then I always like a little bit of some sort of wooden tool, which you have, I think, for clay. You could snag that as well. So I'm going to tip my camera down here, so bear with me a second. And we're going to be concentrating on this section of town right here so you can maybe see what I'm doing. The first thing you're going to do is to carve a sphere. So a sphere is actually a really difficult thing to carve to make it perfect or relatively perfect without using the forces of relativity and centrifugal force and all that stuff. You're going to want to break your soap bar down into sections. So you're going to do it very carefully. So when I say break, I mean cut carefully. And to get a sphere, you're not going to want to use a big chunk like this. That's not going to work. So you want to chunk it down into a cube, right? And basically what you're going to do is take the edges off of this to get to the sphere. So there are a couple different ways you can do that. You can try by using your corrugated knife here. I would say to work on the high spots at the end of this soap bar. So you can give yourself a score, and I would score all the way around. If you want to, you can try, once you get a nice deep trench, deep score, you can try to cut through, but usually if you've scored enough, you can generally put that knife through and snap it off. You do want to be careful because all this messy stuff here, you're going to have to clean that up a little bit. That's not going to be any good for carving. So if anything is loose, just carve it away gently, clean that up. We'll save that for later. Same thing with this. I'm now going to cut this in two, so the same thing. I want to score. And this is where if you have a kitchen knife that's not terribly sharp, this is actually a carving knife. This is called a sloyd knife. A sloyd knife, sloyd means work in Swedish. So it's a work knife. And you can see it's not like terribly sharp, but it's sharp enough to do a nice edge. And it's dull enough not to really cut you. So I love this knife. This is a great knife. So if you have a kitchen knife that's not like crazy sharp, I would employ that. Okay, so I want to keep my workspace kind of clean just so I don't get completely lost in the shuffle here. So I'm going to sweep that stuff away. And in order to make a sphere here, like I said, you want to start taking the edges off. And you want to be a little bit careful because you don't want to like hack this thing into nothing before you know it. So I've sort of rounded that side. Now I'm going to kind of round this side. And I'm going to go for the edges here. Now you can see I'm a little bit longer than I am tall, so I need to take care of that. So I think what I'll do is just choose one of the long sides and just kind of nibble at it a little bit. And what you want to do is kind of hold it up every once in a while and just say, okay, well, it's getting there, but it's still a little rough. And you can see I'm biting off like little tiny pieces at a time. I'm not going nuts here. It's very subtle, and you see also that I keep rotating it. That's really important. And that way you won't get high sides and low sides. You can see it's starting to really take a spherical shape. At this point, if you're using something really sharp like an X-Acto, you might want to switch to something a little more dull, because an X-Acto will take a lot of material off really quickly. And you probably don't want to do that. Once you get to a point where you're fairly certain that you have a sphere, that's not terrible, it's pretty close. You got to switch gears here a little bit. You're not going to be able to make it perfectly round without the aid of a curved blade of sorts. Now, we don't have curved blades in your sculpture box, so you're going to have to employ something else. And my favorite tool is the cap to a glue stick. Now, you may have that in your box at home somewhere, or you may not. I've got a little one and a big one. I'm probably going to use the big one first, and then I may use the little one. You can sort of see how I got to this, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this round shape, this round form, and I'm just going to rotate my sphere in this form right here. And so what that's doing is it's shaving off the eccentricities while simultaneously polishing it, which is kind of sweet. So that's basically that in a nutshell. So I'll show you what I have now. If I sat here for another 5 minutes, I would get this pretty perfect. I'm not going to do that because I want to shorten the video, but you can see how that's really starting to take shape. Now it's still a little oblong, so if I were to roll this down the hall and try to have some accuracy, it's a little bit wonky. So you can see it needs to be worked a little bit more. And ultimately, this is what you're ending up with. That nice, perfect surface there. So that rolls really, really well. So that's your first assignment. So I hope that makes sense. You're going to try to come up with a sphere in soap, okay? So have fun, good luck.